Hey, I'm Hallie, and a week into this war, U.S. and European officials say dark days are ahead. As we're learning now, the mayor of a key Ukrainian city says the Russians have taken over. We're talking about Kherson, a city being bombarded by missile strikes, like the one you're seeing here, right? The one that you're looking at on screen, one that's being overrun by Russian soldiers right now. And control of this city means controlling access to Ukraine's main river and the Black Sea. Take a look at this map. It shows just how intense the attacks are getting in the southern part of Ukraine. The red, that's the part controlled by Russia, right? Those are the Russian-controlled areas. They're making really big progress there. Where Russia's struggling right now is further up north, near Kyiv. Check out these satellite images. They show a huge convoy of Russian troops outside the Ukrainian capital. They are still stalled, according to a senior defense official. But just in case, Ukrainians are putting up tank blockers in Kyiv for when the Russians do eventually arrive, and in all likelihood, that is only a matter of time. And check out what it looks like in the Russians' path. This is new drone video into us, showing the devastation to a suburb in Kyiv. Tanks lining the streets, smoke coming up from the ground, buildings totally leveled. And now, just in, we're learning from the Russian side, they've agreed with Ukraine in new peace talks today to create a humanitarian corridor, basically a safe passageway, right? The ability to get civilians out and humanitarian supplies in. But that's not enough for Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. He's telling our Richard Engel he wants to talk with Putin himself. Watch.
It's not about I want to talk with Putin. I think I have to talk with Putin. The world has to talk with Putin because there are no other ways to stop this war.
Speaking of Putin, he did talk with the French President, Emmanuel Macron. Sounds like it got pretty tense. The French say Putin thinks the situation is going to get worse because, in his words, quote, Ukraine chose it. We've got more on that in a minute. But for now, I want to go to Cal Perry, who's in Lviv, Ukraine. And Cal, you know, from Washington, the capture of Kherson, this feels like an inflection point. This feels like a potential turning point. Do you get that sense on the ground?
Yeah, we absolutely do. And for all the reasons that you laid out, strategically, you know, it was always anticipated that Putin might want to draw that land bridge just north of Crimea and connect it to those eastern breakaway provinces. At least that's how he would sort of frame them. But it's also because it's the first city, right? And that matters here because for so long, no cities were falling here in this country. And the Ukrainian army, as well as civilians, were able to kind of hold it back. But now you have this creeping sense that while the Russians may be slow with it, they're being very methodical and they're unrelenting on their march towards these cities. It's for that reason I think it matters a great deal. So
as we were coming on the air, Cal, and I referenced this a moment ago, there's this, it seems like agreement. We need to say tentative agreement, right, to create this basically passageway, safe passage for civilians to get out and humanitarian aid to get in. I had the opportunity to speak with one of the president's advisors on the National Security Council about this, Amanda Sloat. Here's what she said.
That certainly is not the end of the conflict. We're continuing to call for a ceasefire and want to see all of the fighting stop. But certainly steps that can be taken to help address some of the immediate needs of civilians is very welcome.
And this is what I've heard from other experts I've talked to, Cal, a glimmer of hope. Like, obviously, it's better than not to have this passageway, but it is so far from a ceasefire. It's not that.
That's right. And if we can put that map back up, we have a map that sort of helps you figure out where my head is. And it's almost like the Russians have opened up a two-front war, right? In the north, we heard today from the Sumy region head that the entire region, as he put it, is, quote, hell on earth, that there are 5 villages being shelled nearly around the clock there. Civilians cannot move. They are stuck in bunkers. They are stuck in basements. And again, the shelling is happening in residential areas. To the south, we sort of touched on this, from the city of Kherson to Mariupol. You have these Russians basically cutting off the south, choking it off. So when you talk about these humanitarian corridors, it's one thing in theory, right? But as we report this story out, we have to be realistic about it. These humanitarian corridors are incredibly tricky to pull off, not only just logistically on the ground, but politically as well. And you have the Ukrainian president constantly saying, consistently, I should say, saying that it's impossible to negotiate under fire. So you have the Russians saying they're willing to sort of discuss it, but at the same time, they are indiscriminately bombing these cities.
You doing okay, Cal? I know you've been out there for a while. It's, I know, tough to cover this stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing great here because I think we're removed, right? We're removed from the front. We're removed from the violence in your face. And that matters a great deal. Plus, when we talk about these wars, think about the people who right now don't have power and water and heat. People are living in these bunkers and they don't have basic stuff. I'm in a hotel full of journalists and I have power, and we had breakfast this morning, and that makes all the difference in the world. And so when you listen to the officials talk about what these folks in these villages are going through, you get a much better sense of what's happening on the other side of the country. We feel removed from the violence. We're lucky that way.
Cal Perry in Lviv, Ukraine. Cal, thank you. You know, Cal's talking about this, right? There are people who don't have power, who are freezing cold. We've seen the snow there. And look at this. This is the scale of that humanitarian crisis we're talking about. That down at the bottom, right, that was last week. Not many people who were actually trying to leave Ukraine at that point. Followed all the way up to today, you got 1 million in a week. 1 million people trying to get out of the country because of the conditions that Cal was just laying out. Right? The UN's top refugee commissioner says he's never seen an exodus happen this fast. And look at where these people are headed. Half are headed to Poland. You've also got tens of thousands of people to other countries, to Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Moldova, even some to Russia. But behind the numbers, there are people. We've been talking about this. There are people trying to stay alive, families trying to stay together as best they can. Look at some of these shots from the Ukraine-Poland border. You have officials, they're handing out stuffed animals to kids. I mean, think about what that says about this crisis, that these officials have stuffed animals on hand because they know that kids are going to be coming through, trying to escape the violence here as they're getting off those trains. Kelly Kobier is in Poland. And Kelly, UNICEF says of the 1 million people who've left Ukraine over the last week, half of them are kids, right? Tell me about the conversations you're having with families.
Yeah, well, over and over again, Hallie, we're talking to mothers who say, you know, every parent who has a child and can get them out is getting them out. That's the primary concern of all of these families, is getting the kids to safety. And we've talked to women who have been traveling for, 20 hours, 30 hours, several days just to get the children to some place where they have a bit of stability and they're not, hearing bombs and explosions. One woman said that she told her daughter one morning while waking up, pack your bag, we have to go. I mean, it was just that quick. And they're arriving with next to nothing. You saw those toys. It's because these kids are just arriving with maybe a backpack. They literally have nothing, Hallie.
Kelly, Ellison Barber was reporting, our colleague who, as you know, is there, in the region. When you look, and we've talked about this, Kelly, the influx of people to Poland. They've got something like 3,500 Ukrainians in the capital where she is, only 600 beds. Poland, it feels like there's going to be a scramble to try to keep up with this demand.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way this is playing out on the ground here. There is this huge volunteer army that we've been talking about over the past couple of days, and it almost seems like they are doing the bulk of the work. There are a lot of connections being made on social media, in person at a lot of these reception centers, and that's how people are ending up getting to places where they can live, not just stay for a night or two at a reception center or in a big gymnasium, but actually stay on a more long-term basis. A lot of the border towns here, the local officials have said, look, we don't want you staying in these shelters more than 2 nights. We really want to get people out into the community, into other parts of the country where they can have a little bit more stability.
The hard part about this, too, of the many hard parts, as you're seeing on the ground, Kelly, is like there's not really a permanent solution. I think there are some folks who are looking back to the occupation of Crimea by Russia in 2014, right? This is not a 3-week-long thing, potentially. We're talking about something that may be longer term as it relates to these refugees being out of Ukraine. Are they planning for that? Are they thinking about that? Or is this right now still just triage at this point?
I think at this point it's triage. I mean, we did have the European Union, all 27 countries agreeing to this 3-year sort of amnesty. You don't have to really go through the asylum application process. You can work in any European country for at least a year, and then it's extendable. But people really aren't thinking that way right now. Listen to what one woman said who came from Kiev. She left her entire family behind, and she's just thinking about the next few hours. Take a listen.
I need to start new life because all my life now was.
Will you go back?
I don't know. I don't understand, even believe, that I hear.
Hallie, so many people just sort of in shock that this is actually happening, that this is their new reality.
Kelly Kobiela in Poland. Kelly, we're glad to have you there. Thank you. So just this afternoon, we talked about how the Biden administration was hoping to tighten the screws on Putin. They're doing that by basically closing the net around dozens of oligarchs, these really rich Russians and their families. The president announcing it in the cabinet meeting you see there just within the last few hours. And the administration says they're also working with allies. What does this mean? It means that these millionaires and billionaires who are Russian will be cut off from the U.S. financial system. Any assets here will be frozen. They can't use their property, whether that's a yacht or a really nice apartment or whatever it is. It comes after earlier in the day, France seized, speaking of yachts, that one. It's owned by Igor Sechin, the CEO of a huge Russian oil company. Yesterday, you had Germany seizing another yacht belonging to another really rich Russian. It's all part of the West strategy to try to target people who have made money, who have profited off their relationship with Putin. And here he is earlier today talking about the invasion, promising the families of Russian soldiers who have died in this conflict 5 million rubles. That's something like $50,000. Keir Simmons is joining us now from Moscow. And Keir, I want your context here on these sanctions on oligarchs that the U.S. has announced, assets getting seized, et cetera. But then you compare that, right, to reports that President Putin is increasingly isolating himself. You and I have talked repeatedly about the fact that his inner circle is very small, and really the only one making the decisions for Putin is Putin.
Yeah, exactly right. And President Putin has a lot of money. A lot of his assets are here in Russia, although we did see what is allegedly his yacht moved from Germany just before this conflict erupted. And certainly ordinary Russians are seeing the Western stores that they have known. In this city, for example, Moscow, closed down. I think many of them will be gone by the end of the weekend, closed down. Still there, obviously, but not open for business. So, yeah, there is a lot of pressure. But as we've said again and again, does President Putin feel that pressure? Probably not in the short term anyway.
How significant is it that he is acknowledging, at least in some way, the fact that Russians are losing their lives in this war?
I think that is significant in the sense that you just keep seeing the Russian narrative shift. So we've talked about how their plan has not worked, but they're shifting their plan. Well, the narrative is the same with the narrative. So what we saw today, by the way, once again, another sort of kind of furious speech by President Putin. But what I think we saw there was him say, OK, Russians are dying, but they're heroes. And they even stood up for a minute's silence for them. That, of course, may not placate the mothers and fathers whose children who lose their children here in Russia, and that's an issue, a political issue for President Putin.
There's also this discussion that's bubbling over the past few days, given some of the signals that Putin has sent as it relates to, you know, nuclear weapons. This is a country with the world's biggest nuclear arsenal, right? You've seen the U.S., it seems, try to tamp down talk of concern there, make our own moves, for example, from the Pentagon by postponing the planned launch, right, test launch of an ICBM to try to send this signal that we are de-escalating in America. How do you read that? How should we be thinking about that?
Well, I think it just goes to this question of whether it's true that President Putin is isolated. I mean, he clearly is. Whether it's fair to say that he's erratic, as Western officials have been saying. Actually, Hallie, I had a chance to question Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, about this issue, and I asked him about whether it is fair to say that President Putin is isolated and erratic, which he wouldn't answer, which I guess is an answer in itself. And then for another question with him, I asked him about that question about the nuclear threats. Take a listen. Can you reassure the world that Russia would not fire a nuclear weapon in anger, would not fire a first strike?
We don't have insane people. We have our military doctrine that describes the parameters and conditions for flying nuclear weapons. It contains no escalation for de-escalation.
That no escalation for de-escalation is reference to a apparent Russian policy, Hallie, which is to threaten a nuclear strike in order to win a conventional war. The fact that he said that is not a Russian policy, not a Russian strategy, I think Western officials will pay close attention to that.
Keir Simmons, live for us in Moscow again tonight. Keir, thank you. So let's talk about a little bit of the political piece of this, because there's some new NBC News reporting out today saying the White House is looking at how to sanction Russia's energy sector. But then on Capitol Hill, you have these calls growing to ban Russian oil imports. So let's talk about oil prices, right? They hit levels that energy analysts had warned us about, $120 a barrel internationally, and in the U.S., $116. If you don't know how to put in context barrels of crude oil like Brent, I get it. You are not alone. Here's what you need to know. This is the highest it's been, that number on the right of your screen, in 14 years, right? And if the price of oil goes up, the price of your gas that you put in your car could go up too. That is a real concern for this White House. I want to bring in Mike Memoli, who is joining us here in Washington. Let me put this in sort of really clear terms, Mike. There is this appetite here. It seems to be growing in some quarters on Capitol Hill, with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi backing this too, saying, hey, maybe we should ban Russian oil imports. The White House doesn't seem to be wanting to go that far. But then I had a conversation with an NSC official who said nothing's off the table. Where are we on this? Isn't going to happen? And if it does, what does it mean?
Yeah, I think the daylight between what we're hearing from the White House podium and what you heard from a White House official today speaks to the fact that there might be more of an appetite for banning Russian oil imports among the Americans than among our allies. And everything that the U.S. has tried to do at this point is work in concert with our allies. We're stronger together, to use a former campaign slogan, but that's the way the White House sees it. And so I think what we're seeing is, and according to some new reporting from my colleagues Carol Lee, Courtney Kuby, Josh Letterman, they're looking at sort of creative ways to not disrupt the current oil supply, but still go after Russia's energy industry, which really, despite all the ways in which the U.S. has tried to strangle the Russian economy, still is generating billions of dollars for them. And that would involve sort of, we've used the term export controls to describe how the White House is trying to prevent sort of advanced technology from going to Russia, to what they would use to diversify their economy. Well, there are ways that the U.S. can do similar tactics to prevent Russia from sort of future energy exploration, future oil drilling. And that's really what the White House seems to be focused on at the moment. But you're right, the pressure on Capitol Hill is growing, and that's something that we need to keep an eye on.
Mike Memoli, live outside the White House for us. Mem, great to see you. Thank you. In an NBC News exclusive tonight, former Attorney General Bill Barr talks with our Lester Holt, taking us inside the room for the moment when former President Trump accepted Barr's resignation after he refused to say the 2020 presidential election was fraudulent. Of course it was not. Watch.
And I told him that all this stuff was bullshit and about election fraud. And, it was wrong to be shoveling it out the way his team was. And he started asking me about different theories, and I had the answers. I was able to tell him this is wrong because of this.
You're trying to set him straight.
Yes, and he listened. He was obviously getting very angry about this. I said, okay, well, look, I understand you're upset with me, and I'm perfectly happy to tender my resignation. And then, boom!
He slaps the desk.
He slapped the desk, and he said, accepted, accepted. And then, boom, he slapped it again. Accept it. Go home. Don't go back to your office. Go home. You're done.
You're done. In a statement to NBC News, Mr. Trump denies Barr's account. And then breaking right before we came on the air, we have another piece of information as it relates to what happened on January 6th with the House committee there, subpoenaing Kimberly Guilfoyle, Donald Trump Jr.'s fiancée, Committee Chairman Benny Thompson, saying they want to talk with her because of her involvement in the events that led up to the Capitol riot, saying she was in the Oval Office that morning, and not only did she speak at the rally on the Ellipse, but was also involved in raising money for it. I want to bring in now Leanne Caldwell. And Leanne, this is all one piece of a whole, right? Because it is those lies about the election that Bill Barr was talking about from former President Donald Trump that in many instances entirely drove what happened with the insurrection on January 6th and the impetus for people showing up. Now you have the committee looking at January 6th, subpoenaing Kimberly Guilfoyle, meaning they're not asking nicely now. They're not saying, come on in, pull up a chair. They're saying we have, the muscle of the law behind us here.
Yeah, they did ask nicely, and Kimberly Guilfoyle actually appeared with the committee last Friday, and then she left that proceeding and saying that they had violated the terms of the agreement by members of Congress actually being in that deposition room and asking her questions. And so she refused to cooperate, even after saying that she would talk to them. And so that's where this subpoena comes in. And this Kimberly Guilfoyle, as you just said, she was around on January 6th. She spoke spoke at the Ellipse. The committee says that she raised funds to help with this entire effort. And so she's someone that they want to talk about. And she kind of made a spectacle of it last week. And so we'll see if she complies with the subpoena, Hallie.
There's this other big story from the January 6th committee now. Overnight, we've learned that they have, in this legal filing, said they have reason to believe that former President Trump, his allies, were part of a conspiracy to try to overturn the election results, basically outlining what they see could be criminal charges, basically, against him, right? Ways in which they believe that these folks broke the law. Talk me through it.
Yeah, this was quite a blockbuster document. So this is revolving around John Eastman, a former attorney, advisor, and participant leading up to January 6th. And that's what the participant part is what the committee is saying. So John Eastman is trying to withhold thousands of pages of documents from the committee. He filed suit against the committee. And so this is the committee's response to it. So this is a legal document where the committee says that they need those documents from John Eastman because they have reason to believe that those documents show that the former president committed perhaps up to or at least 3 crimes, including obstruction of an official proceeding, which is the vote count, the electoral vote counting up here on Congress on January 6th, fraud, as well as another one. And so this is a back and forth. This hearing is actually going to be held and heard next week in California. But this was a pretty explosive document. And remember, John Eastman is someone who tried to convince the former Vice President Mike Pence to reject the the Electoral College count on that day. So, yeah, this really gave some insight into what the January 6th Select Committee has received and what they're thinking moving forward.
At the hearings, Leanne, those, it sounds like, I mean, May, right? The summer, as far as public hearings related to what the January 6th committee knows?
Yeah, perhaps even April. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about April, but then there's going to be an interim report, and then they're supposed to finish up their depositions, they said, in the next few weeks, next month or so. And then there's going to be a final report at some point, which one of the members of the committee, Elaine Luria, told me today could be thousands and thousands of pages. We'll see how this all works out, but they are trying to wrap up this investigative part of their investigation, Hallie.
Leanne Caldwell on Capitol Hill, thank you. So that is the investigation as it relates to Congress, right? How about as it relates to the Department of Justice? There's some new updates tonight with this dramatic moment, really, cinematic kind of, in a federal courtroom this afternoon, with the son of an accused Capitol rioter taking the stand against his own dad. We're talking about Guy Reffitt. He's the guy who prosecutors say led the mob to the Capitol, was kind of the tip of the spear here. Well, just within the last hour or so, you had prosecutors playing recordings, audio, that Jackson Reffitt recorded of his dad after Guy Reffitt got back from Washington. In one recording, Guy Reffitt was heard saying, quote, "I was willing to die." He was also heard saying, according to our team in the courtroom, quote, "I did bring a weapon. This gun right here was loaded. That was a historic day. I'm not done yet. The beginning, bro." Jackson Reffitt also talked about elements from the group chat he and his dad and his family members had been on in the month prior to the insurrection. Reffitt is accused of charging at police with a gun. The defense says Reffitt never assaulted any officers or helped anyone assault them. Again, this is the first criminal trial stemming from the Capitol attack. Pete Williams is here. For the last couple nights, Pete, you've been on. We've been talking about Guy Reffitt. We've been talking about this trial. And this moment that you previewed has arrived here with Jackson Reffitt taking the stand against his own dad and playing those audio recordings after having what you so memorably described yesterday as dropped a dime on his dad to the FBI.
Right, and I think you're right to say it's cinematic, it's dramatic. I mean, imagine this courtroom. He's sitting there in the defense box with his father just on the other side of it.
And we can't see those pictures, by the way, only the sketches, no cameras.
That's right. It's federal court. So it turns out that his son, Jackson Reffitt, who's now 19, was 18 when all this happened, actually first reached out to the FBI in December before the January 6th riots because he was concerned about what his father was saying. He thought his father was up to something that would be violent, and he wanted the FBI to know about it. So on Christmas Eve, he actually sent a message to the FBI tip line. But he actually didn't hear from the FBI until later when the FBI contacted him. He reached out to the FBI again after his father came back And that's when FBI agents came and they searched the house. He was not home at the time. He says it was a surreal experience to go to the house when the FBI was searching, when his family at the time didn't know why they were there. Now, I think a couple of things have to be said about this. Number one, it's highly likely that the FBI would have arrested Guy Reffitt anyway, even if his son hadn't called the FBI, because remember what they've been doing. They've got 750 people so far roughly charged, looking at photos, looking at videos. I mean, they've gotten most of these.
Ultimately, he would have been identified potentially anyway.
Exactly, right. So that's thing one. But thing two is we have yet to hear the key testimony about the charge that relates to this conversation in the home afterwards. And that's when, according to the prosecutors, Guy Reffitt said to his two children, now don't tell the police or the FBI what I'm telling you now about what I did at the Capitol, which I say, Guy Reffitt said, was a great patriotic exercise because, you know, if you did that, you'd be a traitor, and you know what happens to traitors, they get shot. So presumably that's yet to come from him. And then again, tomorrow, his daughter will also testify about hearing that same thing.
I know it's a limited group in the courtroom, Pete. Do we have any sense of the reaction as Jackson Reffitt was testifying today? I know these things are sometimes hard to, like, objectively quantify, but I'd be curious.
Yeah, you're not going to see much reaction because there are so few people in the courtroom. You know, as I think we talked about yesterday, it's so strange, this first trial after the COVID restrictions, the jury is not in the jury box. They're all scattered throughout the courtroom. As a matter of fact, the judge began the proceedings this morning by saying some of the jurors say they have trouble seeing the defendant.
Because they're so far back in the room.
And they're seating in different places.
Yeah.
If you know, when you're in the jury box, you always can see the defense table. They're right there. But when they're all scattered around, they can't see it as well. And the judge was saying, I'm not sure whether there is a fair trial right for the jurors to always be able to see the defendant. But you know, that just shows the sort of growing pains of doing this first trial after COVID.
You mentioned the daughter who's going to testify.
Yes.
Do we have any expectation on what that's going to sound like?
Yes, I think she'll be able to corroborate, at least in the government's view, what the son is saying about the threat that the father made not to tell the FBI or the police about what he has said he did when he came to the Capitol.
Pete Williams, I'm glad we are able to share more details about this. I know we've been talking about it, and it sounds like tomorrow we'll hear more from Jackson Reffitt.
Right.
Pete Williams, maybe I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you. Coming up here on the show now, speaking of trials, we now have the verdict in from one related to a former Louisville police officer found not guilty on all counts in connection to the raid that killed Breonna Taylor. The jury deliberating for just 3 hours. We'll talk about what may have made that case that acquittal. And a new settlement between Purdue Pharma and U.S. states hit hard by the opioid crisis. We've got more details on that deal a little later in the show. So a jury tonight has found the former Louisville officer involved in the deadly raid that killed Breonna Taylor not guilty on several endangerment charges of wanton endangerment. We're talking about Brett Hankison, who was wiping tears from his eyes as the verdict was read. He was facing up to 5 years in prison if he were convicted. Prosecutors had said he put in danger Breonna Taylor's neighbors, including a small child, when he fired a weapon that went into the wall of their apartment. Hankison was the only officer to face charges in this botched raid that you see part of here on this body cam video. You'll remember that Taylor was shot and killed after officers broke down her apartment door, exchanged gunfire with her boyfriend. Hankison broke down in tears 24 hours ago when he took the stand in his own defense, saying Taylor shouldn't have died. He testified he started shooting to protect himself and his fellow officers. I want to bring in NBC's Gabe Gutierrez, who's following this one for us. And Gabe, I got to tell you, you know, we were kind of on verdict watch for this, right? Because we knew this was in the hands of the jury. The deliberations really only lasted a few hours, 3 hours, I think. What was the reaction as this verdict was read? And what is your sense in talking with experts about the, you know, not a ton of time it took for the jury to get to this?
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. Well, yes, as you mentioned, 3 hours, not a whole lot, and there was no audible response inside the courtroom. What we can tell you is the reaction outside the courtroom. Breonna Taylor's family actually walked out without giving a comment. The defense, not surprisingly, said it was thrilled with the verdict.
Sure.
But you know, we just saw that Breonna Taylor's younger sister posted on Facebook shortly after the verdict came down saying, quote, "It's like they constantly walk over my sister. So certainly Breonna Taylor's family not happy with this verdict. But Hallie, as you know, and as we've been saying on this broadcast, this case, both the prosecution and the defense argued, was not about Breonna Taylor, but in fact, as you said, was about that adjacent apartment that Hankinson fired into multiple times.
But so explain the context, Gabe, for why Breonna Taylor's family may feel, as you just described, so, to paraphrase that post, betrayed by the system of justice here. And it dates back to the somewhat controversial decision to not charge anybody in the death of Breonna Taylor and the killing of Breonna Taylor herself.
Yeah, very controversial decision back in 2020 when the Kentucky Attorney General decided not to file any criminal charges against the officers involved in this raid for directly causing Breonna Taylor's death. The only charge that was filed were these charges of wanton endangerment against Brett Hankinson, the former officer, who, by the way, was fired. And Breonna Taylor's family did get a rather substantial civil settlement, $12 million, related to this case. But never was this case, was the death of Breonna Taylor adjudicated inside a courtroom. And that is what Breonna Taylor's family has said they wanted all along. That they wanted, justice for Breonna Taylor, and that never happened in this case. Again, the breaking news is that this not guilty verdict now of charges of wanton endangerment, leaves the Breonna Taylor's family still wanting more, and they seem very disappointed with this verdict. But as you mentioned, Hallie, just several days long, this trial. 26 witnesses the prosecution called to the witness stand, but it was only one witness that the defense called, and that was Brett Hankinson. And the jury, they, sided with the defense clearly by just, 3 hours. Is not a very long period of time at all. They came back with a very resounding not guilty verdict here, Hallie.
And interesting, too, Gabe, because as we've talked about in other instances, in other trials, not the first time we've seen a high-profile defendant take the stand in their own defense, typically, considered kind of a risk.
Yeah, he got emotional. He got emotional there, and, he said that he thought that there was a rifle inside that apartment. The prosecution came back during closing arguments today and said, well, how could he have noticed there was a rifle? He wasn't actually at the doorway. Hankinson saying he saw this, what's called a muzzle flash, and so he thought that it was a rifle. He insisted that's why he fired these shots. The jury said that it was clearly found that it was not beyond the reasonable doubt that he fired trying to neutralize the threat. So they found him not guilty here, Hallie.
Gabe Gutierrez live for us on that. Gabe, thank you. Appreciate you staying on top of the story. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Northeast Bureau, New York City police have arrested the man they believe is behind a series of attacks on Asian women. We told you yesterday 7 women were assaulted over 2 hours in Manhattan Sunday. We showed you the security video. Well, the 28-year-old suspect apparently barricaded himself inside a public library before he was taken in. He faces hate crimes and other charges for each attack. From our Southeast Bureau, a Texas judge blocked the state from investigating the parents of a transgender teen over gender-confirming treatments. We reported more on this story after a lawsuit had been filed against the state, but the temporary halt issued by the judge doesn't stop Texas's Department of Family and Protective Services from looking into reports about kids getting similar care. And from our Midwest Bureau, Iowa is banning trans women and girls from female sports teams in schools and colleges. Governor Kim Reynolds signed that GOP-backed bill into law not too long ago today. It's effective in the state immediately, but is expected to be fought against by advocate groups filing lawsuits. In about 12 hours, a huge chunk of a Chinese rocket is going to crash into the surface of the moon. Obviously, you're not going to feel it on Earth, right? But it is the first time a piece of space junk is going to accidentally, unintentionally hit the moon. It's not a serious threat to the moon or its orbit. It's not like it's going to knock it out of orbit, but it's going to leave a mark. Look at this. It's moving about 5,800 miles an hour. It's almost 4 tons. It's going to make a 66-foot-long crater. And it hits the moon tomorrow at about 7:30 in the morning. NASA telling NBC it could take weeks or months to identify the impact site. They're psyched about it. They're calling it an exciting research opportunity. Do you love that spin from those NASA geeks or what? And I say that with a lot of affection. Kristen Dahlgren is joining me now. Like, cool, space junk's hitting the moon, but we're psyched to research it. I love that. Talk about the significance of this, like the first piece of space junk to accidentally slam the moon.
Right, and I'm glad you got the Hollywood scenarios out of the way. You know, not a threat to Earth at all. But we are talking about this 3-ton piece of space junk, and it's going to leave a crater that could fit several semi-trucks inside.
That's
so
big,
definitely
Kristen.
not
That's a big
insignificant.
crater. That's like large.
Yeah. Absolutely, on the far side of the moon, and this is where it's going to be difficult for them to pinpoint and why it's going to take weeks and maybe even months because it's out of view of our telescopes and view from our satellites, and so they won't be able to tell right away where it is. And, you know, the significance is it's multi-leveled, Hallie. So there's like this dispute over what it is, and that shows you just how there isn't really as much transparency between countries that are launching these things into space. And then also, you know, it just highlights this idea of space junk and kind of our vulnerability. So I'm glad NASA scientists are excited about it. But, you know, if you think about it and how they can't track exactly where it's going, you think about how fast it's moving and how many other pieces of space junk are out there, it might give some people pause. So not everyone excited about it.
I think that's a very good point, Kristen. You know, what's interesting is we had actually a couple months ago talked about this story because scientists thought this was actually a SpaceX piece of a SpaceX Falcon rocket that was launched a while ago. It's not, right? How did they figure that out? Like, how are they identifying what this is?
Right, and it's so interesting because it was actually first identified by sort of an amateur asteroid tracker named Bill Gray, and he's the one who originally said that he believes that it was part of a SpaceX rocket. And then he looked back sort of at the calculations and the orbit that piece of space debris was in, and he said, wait, I'm correcting myself. And so he now thinks, and a lot of scientists believe, that it's the third stage of a Chinese rocket. China is saying that the stage of its rocket actually did come back into Earth's atmosphere. But now U.S. Space Command is looking and saying, wait, there were two very similar launches, and the piece that we're talking about did not deorbit. So now most American scientists do believe this is a part of a Chinese rocket.
Well, 12 hours or so, it's going to be, you know, vaporized, I guess, when it slams into the moon. Kristen Dahlgren, thank you for that. I so appreciate you talking space junk with this friend. Who knows what we're going to talk about tomorrow? I don't. Let's show up and find out together. Same time, same place. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.